The last video I uploaded on here was of this guy, the Skylanders Imaginators version of Crash Bandicoot, being playable in the Insane trilogy. And I've posted a few things on Twitter showing other characters in the game that you're not supposed to be able to use, and I've been getting a lot of questions and comments about it all, so I thought I'd try to explain what exactly all of this crazy shit is about.
Good thing I'm not wearing tight pants!
So I'm going to show you how I did this later on, but first I just want to go through what I've actually found. So, the files for this version of Crash were found in the game a long time ago, actually. I don't recall who the first person to find them was, but I know that Natsu Ken was one of the people who managed to swap the normal Crash model for this one. And Natsu Ken was also the person who shared all of the alternative skin mods for Crash, like the biker mod and the low polygon mod and so on. And if you're wondering why you never saw this Skylanders model on Nexus mods alongside the others, it's because when you do the model swap, it looks like this. Because unlike those other versions of Crash, this is an entirely different character with a different skeleton and different animations and different everything. And because this is a different character to the normal Crash, he's not fully functional, and the reason why I'm using this particular level to show him with its wide open environment and lack of obstacles is because he cannot jump, so obstacles are quite a problem. He sort of plays a jump animation when you try to jump, but he doesn't lift off the ground at all. I have tried messing with some of his files to fix that, and I've changed a few animations around, but I haven't really had much luck with actually jumping yet. I've even opened up the files from Skylanders Imaginators for the proper version of this character and compared them to what we have here, and I've copied some stuff across, but still no jumping. And he also doesn't interact with the world around him in the way that normal Crash does. His spin attack does kill some enemies sometimes, but it never breaks boxes. Also, his arms disappear when he spins, which must be quite uncomfortable. He can slide, which does break boxes, and if you lift him into the air by some means other than jumping, then he can body slam. And if you mod his animation files, then you can get him to crouch and crawl as well. And I don't believe he can do that in Skylanders, so that's interesting. I can't confirm that right now because I have no idea where my Skylanders portal thing is, but I don't remember that ability being in the game. And actually, if you compare his animations here to the ones used in Skylanders, they are fairly different. Maybe that's just because this is an old version of that character, but if I'm right about the crawling thing, then why would that animation exist in the files unless they were at one stage going to use this version of Crash in the Insane trilogy for real? I don't know, and I don't really care, it's just always fun to speculate. This version of Crash is also basically immune to all hazards except the void beneath the levels, and I haven't encountered anything else that can kill him yet. And when he does die, you don't lose any lives. Not that you know without watching the internal workings of the game, because there's also no HUD when you use him, so he's just not really connected to the game properly. But, in my opinion, he looks cool as shit. I always loved this version of Crash, and seeing him again really just reminds me of how ugly I actually find the Insane version. Well, apart from when he looks like this. Incidentally, this version of Crash can slide and body slam regardless of whether you're playing a level from Crash 1, 2 or 3, and he will spawn in Crash 1 and 2 levels even when they've been modded to play as Crash 3 levels, which may be helpful with finding a way to get the Crash 3 powers working in Crash 1 and 2 without using Cheat Engine, but that is a different issue altogether. So, once I worked out how to play as Skylanders Crash, I wanted to see if I could access any other unused characters, because I knew there were some in the files, in the same format, I just never realised they were playable before. I had looked at the textures for those characters in the past, and I kind of just assumed they were some more Skylanders characters that had been left in, and I never looked into them beyond that. But it turns out they are playable, more or less to the same extent as Skylanders Crash. This one is labelled as Blaster Tech in the files, and as you can see, it's like a rabbit, or perhaps a hare, holding some kind of weapon. I think it's supposed to be some kind of vacuum cleaner or something. You can shoot stuff out of it, or if you hold down the shoot button, it appears to suck air in instead. You also have some other sort of attack here, and another one here where you launch a giant carrot into the air, and then a target appears on the ground, but nothing ever lands on it, and it just remains there forever. But you can see what the intention is, and it's cool. It reminds me of Jazz Jackrabbit actually, and I just realised that what I need to do with my life right now is make a Jazz Jackrabbit mod for this, so I'll be back in a second. Unlike Jazz Jackrabbit, but similar to Skylanders Crash, this character cannot jump either, but if I press this button, I get this green glowing effect, and that is always green, that's not a side effect of me recolouring the rabbit. I guess it's supposed to be some kind of shield, and what's weird about it is that, well, I'm using a PS4 controller, a DualShock 4, as I always do with this game, and to activate that shield I pressed L3. But L3 is not a button that is ever used in the game normally, so I have no idea what key on the keyboard corresponds to L3 on this controller, because there aren't any controls set to L3 in the settings. But there you go. It took me a while to realise that ability even existed. I think I only discovered it by accidentally pressing L3 at some point, but this character and the next two that I'm going to show all seem to have the same kind of shield ability. And on that note, here's another one. I think this guy's really cool. I like this design a lot. This one is referred to as Bruiser Undead, and it's like an undead ice hockey player. He skates around instead of walking, and when he attacks he kind of phases like a ghost, and he can do some other stuff too, like this ice attack, which reminds me of something from Crash of the Titans, which is unfortunate. But the interesting thing about this is that it seems to actually affect some enemies, and it doesn't like freeze them in place or damage them at all. But later in the video you're going to see a montage of these characters being used in lots of different levels. Watch out for what happens when this guy comes up against a pair of hippos, and you'll see what I mean. Just like the others, there's this green shield, but no jumping. You can sometimes use this kind of ghostly attack to cross some small gaps, but I don't think you could beat any proper levels with this guy without cheating. Your best bet, if you want to try getting through a full level with any of these, would probably be this character. The file for this one is called Wrangler Fire, and this was the first one of these mystery characters that I saw, and I was quite surprised when I saw it appear in a Crash Bandicoot level because it's so blatantly out of place. I had no idea what was going on, but it's pretty awesome. You have this like fiery wolf creature which looks pretty badass on its own, and it's being ridden by this warrior, I guess, with a massive battle axe, and we've got a few different attacks as always. This is pretty standard. Then there's this ranged attack where you throw the axe like a lightsaber, and then there's the reason why this one is the one you want for platforming. This charge attack can be used to cross some pretty decent gaps. There's not really any height to it, so it's not like a normal vertical jump, but it can get you across some pits and stuff, and I always got further in levels with this character than the others because of that, so maybe sometime I'll attempt as close to a full playthrough as I can do with this character, because it's pretty fun. But the question is, where did these characters actually come from? Obviously, they were never meant to be used in the Insane Trilogy because they have nothing to do with Crash Bandicoot, so they are just placeholders or test characters of some kind. But who are they? I know very little about Skylanders, but my first impression of these characters was that they don't look anything like the Skylanders characters that I've seen, and a lot of people who saw my tweets and stuff about them said the same kind of thing. But something else I've heard from several people is that the file names suggest that they are Skylanders related, because Tech and Undead and Fire are all types of Skylanders characters, like classes or something. And if you're not aware, the Insane Trilogy uses the same engine as the Skylanders games, the Alchemy engine, which Vicarious Visions has actually been using since Crash Nitro Kart. There's no doubt that this is just another Skylanders game underneath all the Crash Bandicoot stuff, so there is a good argument to be made for these to be scrapped Skylanders characters or something. And if they're not Skylanders related, then I don't know what else they might be. I have discovered that in the files for all three of these characters, there are textures for both red and blue versions. The ones I've been showing are the default red versions, and these are the blue versions. So there is some kind of team thing going on here. I don't know if that fits with anything in Skylanders. I've seen some speculation from the Skylanders community about the possibility that these might have been for some kind of sports-themed Skylanders game or something like that. Of course, the undead hockey dude is a sportsman, but I don't know. Some people reckon these look more like characters from a MOBA or something than from Skylanders, and there are references to PvP in some of the files, so maybe they are from something else entirely. I don't know. At the time of recording, I still don't have any idea what the origin or the purpose of these characters are, but after my tweets about them started gaining some attention, this appeared in my notifications. This is from one Dave E. Phillips, who is a concept artist that used to work at Vicarious Visions, and after posting this, he shared some really nice concept art of these three characters, gave a little background about who designed them, but apart from that, he hasn't said anything about what they actually are. I saw a couple of people tweet him and ask about Skylanders, but as of right now, he hasn't responded to anyone or explained what they are. And my personal interest in these characters doesn't really go beyond I think they look cool, so I'm not going to do any further digging into the history of them. If you want a closer look, then the pictures are all on Dave's Twitter, and he's posted them on Flickr now as well. I guess they might be higher resolution on there, but I still have some more stuff I want to show in the game, so let's get on with it. So I didn't think that there were any other unused characters in the game files after I found all of these, but just to be sure, I searched for the names of these characters in the files to see if there was a nice handy list of characters anywhere that would reveal anyone else that was hiding in the files, and I found exactly that. I discovered this file called Character Listing, which you can find inside permanent.pack if you want to have a look yourself. There's also one for vehicles, but I'll get to that later. If you open this up, you can see that down here are some familiar names. Blaster Tech, Bruiser Undead, Coco Crash, Crash Bandicoot, Template Legacy, not sure about that one, and Wrangler Fire. So these are all the playable characters in the game. Crash and Coco we know, Crash Bandicoot is Skylanders Crash, Blaster Tech, Bruiser Undead and Wrangler Fire we've just met, so who the hell is Template Legacy? I had seen Template Legacy in the files before, but because it doesn't sound to me like it might be the name of a character, I never tried to load it as one, until I saw it listed here. And I am sort of showing you this file to try to discourage people from asking me to make Cortex playable or whatever. This is the list of playable characters. No Cortex, no Tiny, no Dingodile, no Rilla fucking Roo or whoever else you want to play as. These are your options, and if you want someone else, you can mod them in yourself. I did actually try to load the Spyro character from Imaginators because, as I said, they use the same engine, and so the file structures are pretty much the same, but it didn't work. Maybe if there was a PC version of Imaginators, then it might be easier, and it might be easier to get Skylanders Crash working properly as well. But for now, I'm not going to worry about any of that. I'm going to show you who Template Legacy is. And here he is. And you may recognise this guy from a video that was going around a couple of years ago when this game was first released. There was some footage of like a really early alpha prototype of the Insane Trilogy, which was very clearly just a Skylanders game, and this was the player character, except he was orange because I guess they wanted to make him look more like Crash Bandicoot. And I think real Bandicoots do have tails actually, but I've never seen one IRL. Even though I keep going to zoos in Australia, I must have seen every kind of native Australian creature except the Bandicoot. But anyway, this character is the least effective when it comes to dealing with enemies, bless him. None of these attacks actually do anything, but I do love this one. I think it's adorable. He's just a pacifist, and the way the world's going at the moment, we could do with more of those, so I'm not complaining about that. But he is pretty useless. Again, he can't jump, so there's not much point in trying to play any levels with him. However, if you wish to try these characters for yourself, this is the way that I've been doing it. So the only archive you need to mess with to do this is chunkinfos.pack. This contains files relating to every level in the game, and these files are how you can get the Crash 3 superpowers into Crash 1 and 2 levels and stuff like that as well. Some of the levels in the Insane trilogy only allow you to play as either Crash or Coco. So like motorbikes and polar bears are just for Crash, tigers and jet skis are just for Coco. You know what I'm talking about. Those character specifications are also defined in these files, and it's the jet ski levels that are the key to all this. So if I open up the zone info file for, let's do Hot Coco because it's right here. Down here is where the file states which character can be used in the level. And you can change Coco to Crash if you want. That was something discovered by Beta M way back when. You can also just remove the restriction altogether, so you can choose which character you want in-game, like you can with most other levels, or you can remove Coco Jet Ski and the jet ski won't spawn. But that makes the jet ski levels even less fun than they already were. There's a few things you can do by messing with this stuff, and the thing I discovered the other day is that if you type, for example, Bruiser Undead in here instead of Crash or Coco, when you re-import this into the game files and load the level, you will spawn as Bruiser Undead. And if you are going to do this with Hot Coco, you're going to need to use Cheat Engine or something to stop yourself repeatedly falling through the world. And I discovered there's a little island just over here, which is safe to stand on. But it's not that interesting if you're just stuck on a tiny little island in a level that is not designed to be traversed on foot. So how do we use these characters in other levels? Well, the reason why I said the jet ski levels are the key to that is because the zone info files for the jet ski levels contain both Coco and Coco Jet Ski in the character section. They're the only levels that actually have space in this character section to type longer names, like Bruiser Undead or Crash Bandicoot. If you look at other levels that have character restrictions, like Orient Express, for example, they only list either Crash or Coco. In this one, you have enough room to type Crash, and that will work, but anything else, and you're extending into the next part of the file, and it won't register it. And if you change the file size to fit the name in, the game will just crash when you load it. There's probably a way around that, but I haven't found it yet, so everything I've done so far has been about changing these files without changing the file size. Now, if I show you the zone info file for Hog Ride, which is the bike level I was using to show all the characters, you can see it's just like Orient Express. You have Crash's name and nothing else, and no room for anything else. The motorbike is not listed here because it's not recognised as a vehicle in the same way that the jet ski is, but I'll talk more about vehicles later. The way that I was able to load different characters into Hog Ride, despite there being no room to add them into this file, was actually by using the zone info file for Hot Coco. If you compare the names of Hog Ride and Hot Coco, you can see that they have the same number of letters, which means that over in the Hot Coco file, you can replace every instance of the words Hot Coco with Hog Ride, and it won't make any difference to the size of the file. There's no added or removed bytes, so the game doesn't think there's anything wrong. And if you change 331, which is the level number for Hot Coco, to 308, which is the level number for Hog Ride, you now have a file which can be used to spawn as Bruiser Undead in Hog Ride. The file name is still L331 Hot Coco, but that doesn't matter. As long as you use it to replace the Hog Ride file, it will work. Another quick example, just to show that it works even with levels that don't have any kind of character restriction normally, this is the zone info file for Turtle Woods. And this is the place where that restriction would be set, but there's nothing there, because you're allowed to use either Crash or Coco in this level. This time I'm going to use the jet ski level Tell No Tales as the basis, because that name has the same number of letters as Turtle Woods. So I'll replace Tell No Tales with Turtle Woods. I'll change 318 to 201 because Turtle Woods is Crash 2 level 1, and I'm also going to change Crash 3 to Crash 2. I think that might not actually be necessary, but it would annoy me if I didn't, so there you go. And this time, I'm going to set the character as Wrangler Fire, because why not? And although this is set as a Crash 3 level in the code down here, you don't actually need to change it to Crash 2, because the spawning issue you get with the normal characters doesn't happen here. So with this method, you can't do this with every level in the game. I'm sure there is a way to do it, because there always is, and if I could get these characters to jump properly and behave more like proper Crash, I might be more inclined to try to get them into every level, but for now, I've only managed it with the levels that have names which are the same length as the names of the jet ski levels. And if you don't know all the level names, then the 4 jet ski levels are Making Waves, Tell No Tales, Ski Crazed, and Hot Cocoa. And the levels that you can play as these characters in by using this method are Hog Wild, Up the Creek, The Lost City, Temple Ruins, Boulder Dash, Sunset Vista, Cortex Power, Toxic Waste, The High Road, Lights Out, Turtle Woods, Hang 8, The Pits, Crash Dash, Snowbiz, Crash Crush, The Eel Deal, Plant Food, Road to Ruin, Unbearable, Hanging Out, Ruination, Behaving, Night Fight, Pack Attack, Spaced Out, Totally Bear, Totally Fly, Toad Village, Hang 'em High, Hog Ride, Dynamite, Deep Trouble, Road Crash, Tomb Wader, Bug Light, Oedipus Rex, and Future Tense.
But Ard,
I hear you cry.
there's a level in Crash Bandicoot Warped called Mad Bombers, and that has the same number of letters as Making Waves because of the apostrophe. You never mentioned that one, you idiot.
Well, first of all, please calm down, there's more to life than Crash Bandicoot modding, but you're right, I did miss out Mad Bombers, because it seems like the biplane levels work differently to other levels. And this is my segue into talking about vehicles, I hope you appreciate it. So, if I open the zone info file for Mad Bombers, and this is the same with Bye Bye Blimps and Rings of Power, you can see that in the character section we just have Crash Coco Plane. In the jet ski levels it lists both a character name and a vehicle name, but here, because both Crash and Coco are allowed into these levels, unlike the PS1 game I think, it only needs to specify the vehicle. I'm probably not going to explain this very well, so I'll just show you what happens. If you replace Crash Coco Plane with the name of a character, let's say our old friend Crash Bandicoot, then this happens. I have no idea if Skylanders Crash spawned anywhere, but I'm definitely not playing as him, and I also can't actually do anything because my plane isn't here. So it's not ideal, but there is still something you can do with the plane levels. This is referred to as the air jet, and like the extra characters, it's always been sitting in the files, and I always assumed it was a vehicle, but I never thought it would be playable. But here it is, and it's actually quite OP compared to the normal plane. The projectiles are much more effective, and you have this crazy tornado attack which rips through the blimps quite easily in Bye Bye Blimps, and all you have to do to use this is just change Crash Coco Plane to Air Jet in the zone info file for any of the plane levels. Now if you have a look in the vehicle listing file I mentioned earlier, you can see there's the Air Jet and the plane and the jet ski, plus a few other things. Template air vehicle, template land vehicle, and template sea vehicle. But as far as I can tell, these are not present in the game files, at least in the same format as the other vehicles. So the Airjet is, as far as I know, the only available unused vehicle that you can access. And I have been informed by a few people that this definitely, categorically is a Skylanders thing, and it's like an early version of a vehicle that does appear in that series. You may be wondering what else it's possible to do with all this, and I've been experimenting a lot over the last few days, so I'm going to run through some of the questions you may have and try to answer them. So, firstly,
is it possible to use the jet ski in the plane levels?
No, the game just crashes when it tries to spawn you, sorry.
Is it possible to use the biplane or the airjet in any jet ski levels?
Sort of. You can spawn them in and use the attacks, but you can't actually fly anywhere.
Is there any way to bring these vehicles into non-vehicle levels?
The jet ski never works, but the plane and the airjet do. You just can't do anything with them.
If you can fit multiple character names in the zone info file, will multiple characters spawn?
Yes, but only the first one is playable.
Can you use the extra characters and levels with the same number of letters in their names as the plane levels like you can with the jet ski levels?
You can spawn them in, but they won't be playable.
Can you play as Cortex?
No! I already told you. Please stop asking me. Go and play Crash to Insanity.
But you spent so much time modding this game, surely you found some way to play as Cortex somewhere.
Well, maybe. But I think I'm getting distracted now. I've covered the stuff I wanted to cover, and hopefully, if there's anything else you want to know about this kind of thing, then I've given you enough information to let you investigate it for yourself. But if not, please feel free to ask me about it. And as always, thanks to Neo Kesha for the NST Pack Explorer, which is still an invaluable tool for modding this game. Thanks to Beta M for sharing those initial findings with the chunk info stuff. Thanks to Dave Phillips for that concept art, and thanks to you for watching. I hope it was interesting to some extent. Oh, and before I go, on the subject of modding tools, I made a little something the other day called the NST Level Selector, which lets you open the game to any level you want, and this video was much easier to make than it would have been if I didn't have that. So if you want to try it yourself, then I have posted it on the Warp Room. I don't know for certain that it will work properly, but a few people have downloaded it, and no one's told me that it hasn't worked for them, so it's probably okay. So check it out if you want, and goodbye.
Y'all ready for this? Yeah, I thought. Yes, Jackrabbit.